Awesome. And we are live. Everyone, thank you for joining. Whether you're watching live or after the event, we're on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. So wherever you're watching, thank you very much. Today, we're going to be talking about loads of stuff, but all related to work from home, work from anywhere, or work from the office full time, or whatever. We'll talk about all of these things. And it's great to be joined by Dethra Giles, who's been on the show before. Welcome, Dethra. And Libryia James. Welcome, Libryia.
Thank you.
They're both doing both welcome. They're both doing a conference called the Quit Commuting Conference, which we'll talk about later. So super topical for them both. So welcome.
Thank you. Good to be with you again, Lewis. It's always great to be with you.
Thank you. I was just saying that I've been quoting you, Dethra, like ever since our show about the employeepreneur stuff. So thank you. I need to be like totting up all the times I've quoted you. I think it's far too many now. So I think, this year's been crazy, right? Everyone I speak to at the moment, and obviously I do exec search, so candidates, clients, everyone's asking, well, candidates are asking, what are firms doing? And they're all waiting to find out, whether it's Goldman Sachs style, come into the office 5 days or go find yourself another job. One extreme is someone I know, no office anymore, and their staff have to work 5 days a week from home. And then, the middle ground of like 3 in the office or whatever, 2 from home. What are you seeing? Maybe we'll start with Libryia. What have you been seeing this past year?
Yeah, I've been seeing some interesting things. You do have the Goldman Sachs models, like you just have to come into the office. And I feel like this is about to kind of create the Great Resignation, right? We had the Great Migration, we had the Great Depression. I think we're about to get into the Great Resignation where people are saying, I have options. And if you're forcing me to come back into the office when we have proven that we can be productive from home, then I'm going to leave, right? I'm going to leave and take advantage of other options. So honestly, I've seen more companies be mindful of that and say, well, let's figure out either a flexible work option, hybrid option, or, what's the point? Let's just go ahead and be fully remote. And those decisions are driven by so many things, right? It's not just about, the work and managers trusting their employees. It's also driven by financial decisions, right? Because a lot of these companies have long-standing leases that they can't get out of. They've got to use that building space too. So I've seen a little bit of everything, but it's been really exciting to see so many companies embrace working remotely and start to provide either a fully remote environment or a hybrid environment that their employees can kind of make decisions on how they want to take advantage of.
Yeah. Dethra, what have you been saying?
So here's what the pandemic did. The pandemic catapulted us in a direction that we were already going in. So the younger, our working population and our senior leadership population is only getting younger. And that age jump is really a jump. So we're going from, there's so many millennials versus boomers, and there's a smaller amount of Gen Xers. So we're jumping almost a generation into a workplace mindset, right? So the millennials were already in the mindset of, I don't want to be in your office every day. I don't want to commute every day. I don't need to see you every day. I don't have to be there to effectively get my work done. And that was already their mindset, and the mindset that was starting to really penetrate the workforce. So this pandemic has now catapulted that. So many people are saying, wait a minute, as Libryia said, we've proven we don't have to be there. We can get the work done outside of it. And what it's also done in this catapult is it's opened up a global workforce. Companies who initially thought, I can only recruit right here because I need people that can get here, like you, Lewis, in the UK. I need to recruit in the UK because you have to come into my office. It's now, wait a minute, you don't have to come into my office. So I now have a global workforce available to me. So organizations are even saying, wait a minute, this office thing may not be the best thing for our bottom line because I can find the best talent over here for maybe a little bit less, or someone who's even more qualified for what I can afford, right? So all of this is happening in concert. So I think those Goldman Sachs will start to feel the push because Goldman Sachs was a big fish. And now it's like, wait a minute, yeah, you're a big fish, but what really matters to me? My thing about employeepreneur, it's my option. Take control of your career. Now, if the world is open to me, that becomes even easier. So I do think this is a way we're going, that many organizations that are making that hard stamp of you have to come in, they really need to be careful and mindful about what this does to their ability to recruit top talent.
True. There's a lot to unpack there. A lot to unpack. I think on the availability of talent, I mean, so many clients now are saying to me, we don't mind where the role is based, right? So, you know, suddenly you're hunting from a much wider pool of talent. If you're hunting across a whole geography, you know, much more diverse, better quality hires. So it is a really interesting trend, but I'm not sure that will be interesting to see if it continues. You know, like it depends. It depends a little bit on maybe the culture within these firms as well, the types of companies they are. And so I think I'd love that trend to continue. I mean, it's fantastic for that to continue. It will be interesting to see where it ends up landing. But the other thing I've seen, just almost a counter to this, is I don't think this is the work from home that people were campaigning for pre-pandemic.
No.
You know?
Not at all. Not even close.
Not even close. I've been working remotely in some form or fashion for about 13 years. This ain't it. This is not it. And the thing that I have always preached about working remotely is that I have the choice of where I want to do great work. I can do great work from anywhere. And I can do that from, you know, the comfort of my home, from a co-working space, a coffee shop, a beachside villa in Bali. I can do it from anywhere. And this pandemic has completely limited that, right? Mm-hmm. Because for a year at least, we were all just sitting at home, right? So that it's tough, especially for people who are extroverted, for people who need to be in other spaces, need to kind of change their background. I love my background. Look, it's blue, it's beautiful, but sometimes you just need to change where your location is to kind of push you forward. And for a lot of us, our homes basically became our prisons. Right. So it was really tough. You're so right. This is not the remote work environment that any of us prayed for, searched for, hoped for. And it certainly isn't what I signed up for. Because
that's why I think it's really worth remembering. And also, but even before we start this, I think you've also got to point out that if you've got the choice, be super grateful, because there's plenty of people that have to go to work, right? Like healthcare workers, delivery drivers, all of these people that were keeping the world going, you know, you've got to give a big thank you for, and they don't get the choice. So I think, you know, right from the start, if you're able to have this conversation, you're in an awesome spot. I think if you're also thinking about how to create, you know, a work from home or work from anywhere, or what your structure will be, I think it's also important to remember there's no one size fits all. You know, I've spoken to so many people that, like you, like just, you know, all over it. They would love to be able to choose how and where they work. But then I've spoken to a lot of people that have really struggled. You know, we've seen mental health issues have gone up, burnout, you know, like they might not have the space at home to work properly. And so it's also, I think, important to provide space where your employees can go to if they need to.
Absolutely. And Lewis, I think that's why it's so important that we are very careful about the words we use when we're talking about it. So people will just cavalierly say work from home. And it's like, no, this is not about working from home. This is about location independence. So I can work in a coffee shop. I can work on the beach. I don't advise it. I tried it. No, it isn't all it's cracked up to be. Work from a condo, work from my friend. Like Libryia is going to come over today and she's going to be here working for a while before we do everything else. So it's the ability to work from anywhere, not just a specific location at any given time.
And I'd add to that, Dethra, you know, my company's office is located here in Atlanta. And so pre-pandemic, I worked from home. I worked from other cities. I would go visit my friends in New York. But, you know, once every 2 weeks, I would go into the office just to hang out with my coworkers, right? And so for me, it's not about working from home. It's just about having the option every day. When I wake up every day, I want to decide where I feel comfortable working.
Or even where's the most productive place for me to work. There are days when I know I'm going to be the office, everyone is in there talking and I'm going to get interrupted. My boss is going to ask me 5 million questions and I have to get this proposal out to the client. I need to be somewhere where there is no opportunity for interruptions. I will be most productive in this location today.
I am actually never productive at the office. Never. I go to the office to see my coworkers and socialize with them.
Which is great. I mean, it's super important, right? Because you build better relationships and stuff. But what about those that are better off, like with some structure, or they're not quite, I don't know, let's say they're young, right? Just started in the workforce. And I don't know about you or anyone watching, but for me, it took me a while to learn how to work. You know, like you go to school, if you go to university, you go to university, and it's, you know, it's just, you do all of this stuff, and suddenly you're in the real world. And I'm like, you know, you need to structure, be organized, you know, have a great ground game, right? Like turn up on time, get your work done, learn how to work. So I need to, I think it's important to be mindful also that if you're the type of person that's doing great work from home, but you're leading a team, or there's people that are looking to learn from you, to also, you know, adapt as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the pandemic, I actually did a series of videos on how to work from home. After being in HR for all of these years, I have seen two things happen when people work from home, especially the first time they do it or they work remotely. They do one of two things. They either crash and burn because they are now living at work and they don't know how to properly create those boundaries and set times, or they think I have all day to get things done because I can go and do it at any time, and they get nothing done. And so there is a skill, and many organizations missed this at the beginning of this pandemic, sending people off at home to work. They forgot that this is a skill set. You need to train them just like you train them on anything else that their job requires. It's something that you have to learn how to do. And especially for leadership, to learn, how do I continue to mold and craft and train and give this person the skills that they need to get better at their jobs through this divide that we have now, because I can't be over their shoulder every day. So there's a lot of training that actually goes into knowing how to do this effectively that companies missed out on when they did this pandemic, and we went home for the pandemic.
Libryia, you said you've been working at home a long time, right? How did it all come around? Did you get used to it? Was it like, how did you kind of transition, if you like, from like classic office to...
I'm laughing because my first remote jobs were customer service. So the structure was embedded in the job, right? I've got to be up and at my desk to take those calls. But my first, project management remote job, I was contracting, kind of working for myself, freelancing. And my first client was actually in the UK. And they wanted me to start at 8 a.m. their time, which is 3 a.m. mine. So I will just say that I had not added the structure to my own life to effectively work remotely. And you're right, there is a little bit of a learning curve to get to that point, right? And I don't want to say that working from home or working from anywhere, working remotely is devoid of structure. It's just that you are now responsible for that structure, right? So you are accountable to yourself. And there are a lot of remote first companies that their entire organization is remote, whether you are an executive who's been in the workforce for decades, or whether you're fresh out of college or fresh out of high school, whatever that case may be. And they have been able to kind of create that culture where there is structure in their remote work life, be that, all of our calls are on video so that we can, see each other and make sure that you're not sitting in bed in your PJs, right? Drinking a beer. And so all I'm saying is there are so many ways to make sure that structure exists, but it is truly for the folks that feel that they can be self-accountable. And I think it's important to kind of take that, do a self-assessment and decide, am I the type of person that can work from anywhere? Or do I need the accountability of an office? And there's nothing wrong with that if you do, right? Yeah. And what I'm always promoting is the option, right? I just want everybody to have the option. And if that option is, I want to go to the office, then that's great too, right? Yeah. That's great too. That's fine. There's nothing wrong with that.
Definitely. Dethra, what do you think about this? I spoke to quite a few people. They want to work remote, but they're worried that they might get passed over for promotion. Their boss is in the office, their colleagues working next to their boss. It's, it's going to take some structure, right?
It does. And that was many of my clients in the pandemic, especially with some of them who are going back to the office, and the office has given them options of, you can come back if you want, you don't have to. And their big concern right now is, Dethra, we have this career plan for me. What does this mean? We are doing some hybrid formations, something like what Libryia talked about. Hey, Go in once a week. See how everybody's doing. They're not working and they said, they're not getting much work done. So still get the high productivity, get your face time, even find time to do lunch. I had one client call her boss and she says, okay, we still do our bi-weekly lunches that we used to do. And on the first one, guess what she did? She sent him an Uber Eats order. And when it's time for their conference call, Uber Eats is delivered. And she said, you know what? No, these are lunch calls. They've always been lunch calls. We're going to still do that. Guess who's up for a promotion next month? Right? So there are ways to still do that networking. It takes a little bit more effort than it did before, but you should be intentional about your networking and career advancement anyway. This makes us even more intentional and deliberate.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I've been promoted twice in the last few years, and I've been working remotely for a very long time. and I just got a raise. So it is absolutely possible, but it's very much like Dethra said, you've got to be intentional. Whether you're in the office or not, you've got to be intentional about that. I do think that it will become a concern when we talk about hybrid remote workplaces specifically, because there will be people that are there that get FaceTime and people that are not, that don't. And so, if none of us are at the office, then it's an even playing field, right? And you've got managers and supervisors and superiors making the effort to make sure that they're connected. But if it's disjointed and there are people walking around the office every day, it's going to be easy to be out of sight, out of mind. And that's the environment that I've been working in for the last 3 years, right? A lot of my coworkers go to the office. I do not. But I am, as Dethra said, very intentional about making sure I have touch points with my boss, right? Be that in person, over lunch, or just, on the phone or on a Zoom call, right? It's really about you taking control. And you've got to do that regardless, right?
You do. It's back to this employeepreneur stuff, right? But you've got to be, if you're in a larger company and made multiple offices, and they're open to you working remote. I mean, I don't know, like the CEO could be in Denver, you could be in London, your colleagues are all over. You've got to be a lot more proactive with the networking internally, organizing the Zooms, doing the lunches. The Uber Eats is a great touch. But you've got to really decide to do it. Otherwise you could get lost.
Absolutely.
It takes a lot of planning, because it's so easy, when you're going into the office and you're not taking charge of your career and you're just waiting for the company to, provide the drinks, provide the, provide this, provide that, like provide the opportunities to network, provide the opportunities to learn. Now you've got to be, I think, a lot more focused around it and really take ownership of it.
And even being mindful of what that demonstrates. So the people who are working remotely and they're still making those touch points, and they're taking the lead on contacting their supervisor, and they're taking the lead on staying connected to their coworkers, leadership is looking at that. Wait a minute. Not only can you lead in this job, we see that you have leadership as a part of how you are and who you are. You take initiative on these things. And so when I'm thinking about who's going to be promoted, who's shown the most initiative across the board? The person who has to go the extra step to make this thing happen. Wait a minute, you go to the top of my mind, especially if you're even more productive because you're not in the office every day. So really being intentional about the image that you're setting as you're doing this. And listen to me very carefully. People, show up on these Zoom calls. This is not the time to dress down like I'm home. I should have on my t-shirt. My hair can be disheveled. I can look like duvets and pillowcases. No, this is the time to actually show up. People, when I come in, the first thing people look at are my glasses. This is not the time to wear my go-to-bed glasses just because I'm on a Zoom call. This is
Wait, you have go-to-bed glasses?
No, I don't have.
No, you're right. It's important. I mean, some people have their cameras off. I mean, everyone's a little bit more. What was really interesting, a friend, my colleague's son's friend, anyway, I won't go into too much detail. They had an interview, and the interviewer asked them to stand up to see what they were wearing, which is a little bit odd.
That is interesting.
That's a bit odd.
But listen, I could stand up. Now I dress from, I do. I have on a very patterned, I'll do it. I have a patterned shirt. You can't see that matches.
Yeah, cool. Oh, the picture. Yeah.
I'm dressed, because what happens if I need to walk away from the camera for a second and it's like, oh my gosh, I have to crawl because
It's true. You've got to work hard. You've got to get a good camera, get a good mic, get some good art behind you, nice colored walls, whatever it is. And be intentional about it. It is true. Yeah. It is true. What do you think about work from home being a good leveler for gender equality? Are you finding that, specifically females are able to...
And Libryia tagging on this too. What it's really done, Lewis, is for not even decades, centuries, women have been saying, I can do both. I can successfully be a mother and be a career professional and do both of them well. This showed people, wait a minute, maybe she was right all this time. Maybe she was right, because I'm just home and I'm struggling, and I'm seeing these people that are able to navigate career, navigate business, still get everything done. But it really has been a huge burden, because now I tell people my surprise was not that I had to be the lunch lady and the school teacher. My surprise was that I had to be tech support. I had no clue I was going to be tech support, right? But it does level the field for moms, and especially single mothers who had to be the person that was struggling to leave work early just to make it to daycare or after school to pick up their kids. Some of that went away, and we all ended up on that level field of we're all home. But we can't forget, it really was a struggle for some people to have to navigate being mom, being teacher, being lunch lady, being tech support, and all those things.
Yeah. It's also nice for dads. I mean, sorry, go on, Libryia, go on.
No. I was going to kind of go somewhere else with it, but, certainly it's been a big deal for mothers as well. I remember the first remote job I got, I wanted to work part-time, but I was a single mom, and being away from my child wasn't worth the amount of money that I would have made, right? I would have either had to get daycare, which would have taken the little money I earned, or put her with, a relative. And then that's my entire day gone, not around my daughter. And so being able to land a remote job working from home part-time was perfect. But I actually just did a talk with a women's group a couple of days ago about how the future of work is truly for women, because for so many reasons. One, it removes, especially for companies that are fully remote, right? It removes that issue of women being left out of the boys club. Right. So the men hanging out at the office, playing office basketball, doing whatever they do that we're not a part of, or saying, hey, let's go for drinks right after work, and leaving the ladies out of it. It removes us from that. It also removes us from, and I'd say I had some statistics about this. They said that about 30% or more of the pay gap is due to the boys club. Right. Oh, yeah. So a lot of men are making more money because they've got these boys clubs. And so when we remove the location, the physical location, we get to remove those boys clubs and kind of put us all on a level playing field. And the other piece is it becomes about the work, right? If we're all in a remote environment, then we are now being graded on our productivity and the work that we're able to get done, and not just the relationships that we have with one another. I distinctly remember working for a consulting company and getting admonished for leaving work at 5:30 because I had to go pick up my kid. I was the only mom in the group. Yeah. And the guys could be there till 9 o'clock. But the difference between me and the guys was I got there earlier. I worked the entire day. Whereas the guys would go and play basketball in the middle of the day. They would race remote control cars around the office. They would take an hour and a half lunch so they could watch games, but I would come to work, sit down, get my work done, and then have to leave. But I was basically viewed as, not as productive because I wasn't there till 9 o'clock. And so now in this environment for women who have to go and pick their kids up, right? Who have to go home and make dinner and check homework. Now it becomes about the work and not just about the FaceTime and the amount of time I get to sit in the office. And the most important thing I think that remote work does for women is it removes us from an environment where sexual harassment is an issue, right? Right? It starts to put us in an environment where we are safe and comfortable and not subject to those types of issues. I read a report that said about 34% 34% of women felt like they were sexually harassed at work. And of those women, 37% felt like it impacted their careers, right? So if we are able to work in a safe environment, you know, we're separated from that risk, right? Not that it goes away completely, but there's just so many reasons why the future of work is truly for women.
And I want to speak to that productivity issue, Lewis, and some of the clients that I have, the larger corporate clients, not the coaching clients, but those that have me working in org development and things like that. Many of them have been completely shocked by those productivity numbers, because, you know, every company, if they're doing their job, they have their list of high pos, their high performer, high potential employees. And what they found out is that a lot of the people on this list were arbitrary. In this work from home environment where we're not having this FaceTime, we're not doing all the schmoozing, and the halo effect goes away, they realize, wait a minute, when we're looking at the numbers, the high pos aren't who we thought they were. There are people that are really out there producing, like Libryia said, oh, wait, there's someone that comes, they keep their head down, they're kind of quiet, they don't socialize as much, and they might get admonished for that, but their numbers are freaking amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about output versus this presenteeism, or if that's the right word, you know, like being there until being there 10 hours a day, you know, being there until your boss leaves and then go home. That's, you know, that's been the culture so much. But also I think it's tough for leaders. And I think leaders have struggled to adapt to, you know, their team not being in the office and then not having to see them. And suddenly they're having to, and the best ones are, right. And I think you have to, I mean, you know, my point on the effect of on women of this is you've got this huge untapped talent pool that you can now tap into, right? They don't have to travel. They can work from home. They can, you know, like organize their day how they wish. And as long as you're doing a great job, you're outputting what you need to output. You could work 2 hours a day. I mean, does it really matter? As long as you're producing the work you need. One thing to say on dads, though, I mean, for us, it's also great, you know, because a lot of dads do want to be able to take their kids to school, pick them up, things like that. So I think, you know, having like a flexible working arrangement or hybrid, or, you know, maybe we can go through the different definitions, but also enables, you know, guys like me to be able to drop my kids off at school, do my, you know, so I think it's, you know, it's good all around.
And you know what, for dads, it allows them to be the dads they want to be without the negative perceptions. So when a dad says, hey, you know what, I'm going to be the class parent and go and read to my child's classroom. I'm going to go and do dad and daughter day. I'm going to go to the game, or you know what, I'm responsible for picking up my kid. They no longer get that look of, well, doesn't your partner, your the other part do that? No, I get to be the dad I want to be without this negative perception of what a dad is, right? And so it's just better on both parts, especially for those of us who have children, and even for those who don't. It's just a better model.
Yeah, all over. I mean, I'll just give you an example. Actually, at the school gate that I drop my kids off, I mean, there's got to be probably 50-50, like dads and mums dropping their kids off now. And it wasn't the case pre-pandemic, but also the mindset of some women. Like I was speaking to a client, like this was probably 5 years ago, and she is an HR director, and she went to drop off her kids at school, and it was only women, and she was recounting a story to me. And they said, "Oh, do you want to come for coffee?" And she's like, "No, I've got to go to work." And they were like, "Oh, that's a shame. Isn't your husband earning enough money?" You know, I mean, where'd you go with that? So.
When I was pregnant with my daughter who's now 16, she'll be a senior in high school. And when I was pregnant, everyone looked at me and said, "Oh, so I guess you're not coming back." And I said, "Well, why wouldn't I come back?" "Well, doesn't your husband make enough money for you to stay home with the kids?" And I was like, "Excuse me, I love this child, but I don't desire to do that." Those are not the desires of my heart, right? But it's that perception.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
It's interesting. I think I want to get back to the choice thing, because I think it's kind of clear there's so many benefits for
Mm-hmm.
companies thinking about how to structure this. I mean, unfortunately, there isn't a one size fits all. So I don't think you can cram it in. You know, like I see quite a few firms that are saying, you know, you've got to do 3 days in, 2 days at home, or, you know, there's a lot of people that will mandate like what people can do. It feels like though there should be some flexibility and, you know, ability to flex it. But the other thing is that people are so well informed now. You know, you can hop onto LinkedIn, you can go on Glassdoor, you just, you know, hop on the internet and you can
come to the Quit Commuting Conference.
You can come to the Quit Commuting Conference, you can see what other people are doing. But you know, with stuff like your conference, I mean, you know, like you'll be able to hear what other people are doing. And just, you know, people are so well informed now, and it's a real competitive advantage, I think, of trying to attract talent.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so I think it's important, really important to structure.
But you know what, Lewis, what really happened, and my HR people are going to harpoon me for this, but listen, I'm from the HR world. A lot of HR professionals got exposed for not really knowing the full breadth of HR or doing the full breadth of HR. And so what should have happened is there should have been an assessment. Number one, every job is not a remote job. So let's be clear. We're not standing here and saying, you know what, everybody go home, go to Bali, go out there and do whatever you do from wherever. That's not the case. But there needs to be an assessment of, okay, what jobs are able to do this, and what's the impact on those jobs that are not able to be remote work. So a good example, I was working with a company last week, and we were doing this very assessments as they're talking about a hybrid model. Well, if, say, the janitor cannot work hybridly, right? There cannot be a hybrid model. However, if half of your workforce is not going to come in at all, and the other half is going to be hybrid, that absolutely impacts how the janitors will work and what we'll need, right? And so being able to do those types of assessments in your organization so that you can determine what model is the best fit for us.
Yeah.
It's tough though. It's tough though. Everyone wants. This is why, you know, the title was, you know, is it equitable for all? And obviously no, right? I mean, some jobs you just have to go in. I was speaking to a client of mine, who's a sales director, and his sales manager, whose job is selling face to face in London. Basically, he said, I'm going to move to the south of England, which is not really commutable. And this guy said, that's nice, but you won't have a job. And he's like, well, you can't say that. And he said, look, you know, if I put that job on LinkedIn, I wonder how many applications they're going to be. But, you know, the job required them being in London. Another client, chief technology officer, he's got a team of 50 people. He said, no one has to come into the office. We'll meet once a month. It doesn't have to be even in the office. We'll take it in turns around the country. So I'm seeing a real like cross section of things going on now.
Yeah. And it sometimes boils down to the leader's ability to lead. What I've seen also in this, and that leaders' inabilities have been exposed. Because if you were that walk around, look over your shoulder leader, and you managed by walking around and not by productivity, you're struggling right now. Those leaders who are always thinking, like you said, Lewis, I don't care if you work 2 hours or 20 hours. Here's what needs to be done. Here's the deadline. Get it to me. Those leaders and their teams are flourishing. And I've seen that across the board with my clients. When those leaders know what they're doing, it has not been an issue. And they have the assessments to say, you know what, we really do need to be in the office this much. And they're not getting pushback from their team because their team already knows this person knows how to lead.
Yeah. And the companies that have always been remote first, because I know this whole remote and hybrid thing is new and fresh to a whole lot of people, but this was a world that existed pre-pandemic, right? There were companies that have been leading the way, Zapier, Buffer, GitLab, like these companies have been doing this for, you know, a decade or so. And they've been doing exactly that. They've been effectively leading from, again, executives who've been in the workforce for years and years to people that are fresh out of college and high school. They've just been able to be intentional about how they build their culture, how they, you know, manage people, and, you know, just in general, you know, what are their absolutes and values as a company. And the challenge right now is that, like Dethra said, companies and HR organizations are being challenged to draw a line in the sand and say, here's what we're going to do. Here's why we're going to do it. Here's how we're going to do it. And to be very, very mindful of what their strategies are, because I don't think I've ever seen a more competitive workforce as I see today. I know major companies, major retailers that, 5 years ago, anybody would be dying to work for, getting turned down left and right for offers. Some of my big clients are having trouble filling positions because people have options now.
Mm-hmm.
There are, this is great news for everyone, but everyone I speak to is hiring or about to hire. It just feels like, not that I was alive in the 1920s, but it feels like, this next 5 years or whatever is going to be brilliant. There's a lot of work around. So, if you're unemployed now, you can really look, there's some really good stuff around.
It's an employee market. I'm sorry, but it's really it's an employee's market. And as Libryia was saying, I'm finding the same thing. Some of my really larger clients, they're saying, wait a minute, we used to just be able to say, come work here, and everyone would just pour in. We used to get, 200 to 1,000 app people applying for one rec. And now it's like, I'm entertaining this. I don't know.
But I've got another 10 options. So, it's like, why should I come work for you? Is my career going to be better served with you or where I am or in another firm? And you've got to get this stuff right, because it's a big thing, along with, corporate social responsibility and purpose and what impact you're going to have. For me, this is like up there with some of the key things that people are looking for. I always get asked, is it remote? Is it flexible? Is it hybrid? Like those kinds of things. It's super important.
And people are asking those questions. You brought it up very briefly, but people are asking the questions about company social responsibility. And even being with this whole idea of remote work, the idea of sustainability. Listen, it's not just about not coming into your office. I want to know, what's my impact on the environment? We are here in Atlanta, Georgia. If you're not in the Atlanta area, let me tell you, we have some of the worst traffic you would ever want. And so literally you could go 10 miles and spend an hour in traffic. The impact on the environment of all of these cars doing this. So what is your social, what are you doing? What are you doing about sustainability, and how do I impact that? Coming into work, it impacts that.
Yeah. So I think we've kind of agreed that the future is digital, right? Like a lot of people are going to be working at home. How do we make sure that people don't get left behind? Because there's a lot of people, they might not be able to afford the laptop. They don't have good internet connection, things like that. I think we've got to make sure that, these people aren't left behind and they're given a fair chance at landing these jobs too.
Absolutely. Part of it is that companies have to take responsibility. Let's be clear. Many of these organizations are getting a financial kickback from people not coming into the office. So investing in your employees' Wi-Fi, investing in their technology at home should be a given. Most of the organizations I know about who are deciding we're either going to do a hybrid form or we're going to go remote work first, they are saying part of your package is going to be the technology component. And even Libryia and I have talked about this. When you're accepting a job, that's part of your negotiation in your salary and total compensation package negotiation. Hey, right now I have this level of Wi-Fi. You need to pay for this level, and I need.
or call Elon Musk and get that satellite link down. If you're
let's get that going. Yeah, on average, employers save $11,000 a year for remote employees. That's enough to invest in some Wi-Fi and a laptop. And I'll tell you, even for, I talk to people who, don't have a whole lot of internet skills or software skills or technical skills, people that are at entry level with remote work. And every company that I've worked for that I would consider to be entry level. So I did customer service for American Express. That's an entry level position in my opinion. They sent me a computer, right? They did want to confirm that I had the right level of Wi-Fi. I think we had to do a Wi-Fi test at some point, but I think that more and more now, especially because the landscape, it's an employee's market, right? Especially because the landscape is becoming more competitive, you're going to see employers offering that off rip. They're going to be offering those things from the get-go. We'll cover the Wi-Fi cost. We'll cover the cost of getting you a laptop and a monitor and setting up your home office. I actually see that in most job postings, right? So we might not even make it to the negotiation to even have to talk about that. I see that in most job postings that they're going to provide you with the tools that you need to work remotely.
Yeah. And if you're interviewing for something, you don't have those tools. I mean, even using your phone, to be honest, is great. Like really good camera on 4G or something. But no, you're right. There needs to be investment in that. Last question on this kind of stuff is how can people support vulnerable workers? Because there are a lot of people that, struggle with their mental health. And if they're not being required to come in, it's quite, you can see people falling through the cracks. It's so easy to say on the phone, hey, I'm cool, or the video, I'm good. You might even have your video off, right? Whereas in the office, you can kind of tell if someone's all right or not. Is there anything you'll see people doing well around that?
I do see a lot of organizations doing it well. And this is where those organizations that have a strong EAP or employee assistance program, this is when those leaders are really leaning on their EAP professionals. And these are people that are probably therapists, psychologists, and even some organizations have enough to have psychiatrists on staff. If I were them, and what I'm advising my leaders to do is really lean on those people, because this is not our area of expertise. We don't have the knowledge to say, you know what? I think something's going on there. But as human beings, we know how to check on people. So as leaders, continue to do those checks. Again, as employeepreneurs, we're being intentional, but as leaders, you also need to be intentional about checking on your people. Calling, seeing what's on. Hey, turn that camera on. Not just that I need to see you, but things aren't sounding quite right. And working with your EAP to ask those questions. What are the signs I should be looking for? I actually had one company that had their EAP do a training for all leaders to say, what things should I be listening for, looking for, paying attention to, as there's all of this isolation that's going on for many of our employees.
Yeah, so important. So Libryia, how did the Quit Commuting Conference come about?
The Quit Commuting Conference came about because, I've been, for maybe about 6-7 years, I've been teaching people how to land remote work. And earlier this year, I decided to set this audacious goal to help 10,000 moms land remote work so that they can, do great work from anywhere and show up for their families the way they desire. And I was like, well, how do I do this? Because, I'm just one person. And the idea of bringing together all of the teachings and the workshops that I do with a number of other career coaches and experts sounded like a great idea. And I said, well, maybe we do that, for 3 days and teach people like where to find remote jobs, how to interview properly, how to set up their LinkedIn profile, how to, update their resume. What are recruiters really looking for? Things like that. And then it was, well, why don't we bring the recruiters to them rather than telling them where to go and find these jobs? Maybe we can bring these jobs to them. So it was really just an idea that said, let's bring everything into one place so that we can help prepare people to apply for remote jobs, and then just kind of show them, put them in touch with the recruiters that have those jobs. And that's how it came about. I hit up Dethra and said, hey, you want to do something with me?
Nice. So when is it exactly?
It's August 19th through the 21st. Tickets are on sale right now. They're open right now, and tickets are actually free. So that was the other big thing about this. Dethra and I are very, very big kind of servant leaders. We are here to help people improve their career and to kind of live the life that they desire. And so we definitely did not want to charge people to come to a job fair, right? So tickets are absolutely free. You get free access to the workshops, to all of the panels, the keynotes, all of that, and to the job fair. And there are paid ticket levels that give you a couple of extra things, right? So our second tier is $25 right now, early bird. And for those, you get session replays, you get one-to-one networking, speed networking. It's kind of like speed dating, but it's networking.
Which is kind of what interviews are ultimately, right?
Basically, right? Except for this is just 5 minutes to just kind of talk to a recruiter. And the highest level, you get the speed networking, you get the replays. But the really cool thing is you get invite-only small group workshops where we're going to work with you to do a number of things. And we're also doing resume matchmaking. So for all of the recruiters, the companies that are recruiting there, for the people that get that ticket level, we will actually scan their resumes against the jobs that those recruiters have open.
Awesome.
And if they are a match, we're going to put them into like a much longer 30-minute meet and greet with those recruiters to kind of talk with them.
Nice. We have to share the stats of how many people have found jobs through your conference. It'd be awesome.
Of course
Yes,
we'll come back afterwards and talk about it. You have us back again.
100%.
We'll do a recap.
One of the biggest things for me too, though, Lewis, is that at the Quit Commuting Conference, we're not talking about remote work as this utopian world. I mean, we have a full session on all the things you didn't think about. So we're talking about the reality of what remote work is. And it was just really time for someone to help people do this in the right way, or to give them the information to decide, you know what, after going to that conference, I don't know if remote work is for me, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. And I'd like to call out, so like you said, Dethra, we do have a session titled "What You'll Hate About Working Remotely," because I'm a keep it real kind of girl. So is Dethra. We want people to know what they're getting into, and there's pros and cons to everything. The thing I'd add is what you called out, Lewis, is the mental health piece of it. We do also have a session that talks about, you know, how to manage your mental health in a remote environment, how to be prepared for managing that kind of separation from your day-to-day life with your employees that you've experienced most of your career, right?
Yeah.
Or your coworkers, I should say.
That's true. I love it. Thank you so much for joining me. Really interesting. I love talking about this stuff. So for sure, we'll do it again. Good luck with the conference. And if anyone wants to attend, so it's quitcommuting.com. I think they can go to, right?
That's correct.
Yeah, quitcommuting.com.
Awesome.
That's correct.
Done.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And
Thank you.
see you very soon.
Thank you, Lewis.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.